It says here that our title is that we're doing a collaborative prevention convening orientation, but really what we're going to be talking about today is the Families First Prevention Service Program and the comprehensive prevention plan components. So that if you're in this room, that's what we're going to talk about. And I'll introduce myself first. I'm Barb DeGraaf. Some of you may know me. I work for Strategies TA, and I work in a number of counties in the mountain region supporting the development of comprehensive prevention plans. And then my producer and assistant, Brittany, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany, and I am also with Strategies TA and also have the pleasure of working with Barb, and I'll be helping you guys out as well today.
And it's a lot of information. It's a dense kind of presentation. So if you're a note taker like I am, Brittany put a link to note taker slides. Also, all of the information we're presenting here is in the Google Drive, and the Google Drive has all of the presentations from this entire convening that you have access to today, tomorrow. You know, once you have that link, you have access to everything. But if you want to take notes, utilize that link. It'll take you right to the link in the chat will take you right to the Google Drive, to the notes version. All right, we're going to get started. So what are we going to talk about today? So hopefully when you leave here after 70 minutes spent together, you're going to understand your role in child abuse prevention. Hopefully we'll get you to feel comfortable using your voice at the table in child abuse prevention. You heard this morning about tribal engagement and parent partners and lived expertise. But one of the things we want to make sure is that folks that come to the table in child abuse prevention feel comfortable about sharing their knowledge and information so that you can provide good input into the process. So in order to do that, we're going to help you understand the key components of the CPP, the Comprehensive Prevention Plan. I'll try to keep the acronyms to a minimum, but unfortunately, there's a lot of them in this program. And then most importantly, we want you to leave here understanding how important prevention is and how important it is for us. Not only are we trying to prevent child abuse, but we're really trying to help support child and family well-being throughout the state of California and in all our counties. So we really want to support families in every way that we can. So this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about who are the state level partners in prevention. We're going to provide you with some background on the prevention efforts, talk about the Families First Prevention and Services Act, the FFPSA. We're going to talk about the Families First Prevention Services Program, the FFPS, and hopefully you'll understand the difference between those two at the end. And we're going to talk about what's important and what you need to know about comprehensive prevention planning, the CPP. We're going to do a brief overview of the funding streams that are available. We'll talk a little bit about how some frameworks like protective factors and social determinants of health contribute to how we structure our comprehensive prevention plan. And we're going to talk about community pathways. And then hopefully you'll leave knowing what's next for tomorrow, as well as moving forward in planning and implementation in your counties. So who are our state level prevention partners? You've heard from a lot of them today. California Department of Social Services, there are leaders with Office of Child Abuse Prevention. Strategies TA, that's where Brittany and I work, and we are engaged in not only comprehensive prevention planning support, but also CAPC support activities. CAPC is the Child Abuse Prevention Councils throughout the state of California. Casey Family Programs, which provides us with a great national overview of what's happening with this program, because it is not just a California program, it is a national program. Caltrin, I'll talk a bit more about them in the next 3 slides. Key partner, the Child and Family Policy Institute of California, working in many counties right now, helping support your planning. Implematics, if you've been on any of the Caltrin webinars about planning, you've heard from Dr. Kush Cooper, who leads the Implematics team, and they're an excellent resource in all things in child abuse prevention planning, the County Welfare Directors Association, as well as the Chief Probation Officers of California, who are both key partners in the Families First Prevention Services Program. Oh, and you. I covered up and you with all the with your faces. So the most important part of the planning are the folks here today. So what I'd like you to do, if you have a moment, put in the chat we have your name. So the agency that you're representing, if you're an agency representative, and the county, as well as if you're like a parent partner or you're a tribal representative, who you're representing in your county. So if you would share some of that with us, because your participation is critical to the process. So let's see who we've got. And Brittany, you can help me read some of the chats. So we got Leora, SJC, San Jose, is that county? Behavioral health, did I guess correctly? We have Jessica from Yuba County Child Welfare Program Manager, welcome.
Looks like we've got Orange County.
We've got Caltrin. Yay, Jessica. I've got 3 slides on you, Caltrin. So please correct me, add anything. Feel free to unmute yourself. Alyssa from Child Welfare Services, Nicole, Orange County, San Benito County, Sonoma County Child Welfare, San Joaquin, California Alliance Catalyst Center. Wonderful. We got a great group. And we have a small group, it's 44 people. So I hope that you will feel comfortable using the raise your hand feature and unmuting yourself if you want to share anything. And if you have any questions as we go through the presentation, please just put them in the chat and Brittany will stop me and we will ask the questions, because again, it's a lot of information and I do tend to go through things rather quickly to get through it in the time period. We have San Francisco Unified School District, excellent. Vista Differential Response from East Kern County, wonderful. There's some great community services, Glenn County, Stanislaus, probation, yay, Los Angeles County, Napa, great, wonderful. So we have a really great representation. So again, feel free to chat your questions, feel free to raise your hand, and Brittany will keep monitoring, and we will make sure to answer your questions to the best of our ability. Anything we can't answer, we will take back to the team and make sure that we get the answers for you. Okay. So I just want to talk real quickly about Caltrin, because if you leave here today with just one thing that you do, if you're not already on the Caltrin mailing list for their newsletter and you're not utilizing their resources, please do that. And Brittany will drop a link to the Caltrin website in the, and Jessica, please feel free to add anything you want to add about Caltrin. Caltrin is just a key partner in providing the training, free training and resources for not just the comprehensive prevention planning, but also for all of our family and community well-being and support services in the state of California. They have webinars, they have self-paced courses, the job aids, everything is recorded. Their website is extremely well organized. You can get lost on it because there's a lot of information. Again, it's your one-stop shop for all things Families First Prevention Service Program, comprehensive prevention planning. They've had learning series in partnership with Casey and Informatics. There's webinars and workshops for all different areas around, again, supporting children and families. And they have a specific website, they have a specific link on their website for comprehensive prevention planning resources. If you go on the Caltrin homepage, you'll see it on the top. It's a link in the center, and you will get to all the different materials and information on comprehensive prevention planning. And again, please, if you do nothing else, sign up for their mailing list, because they have resources for training, supporting leadership, parent partners, everything that we're talking about today. And I just wanted to share, this is one of their newer offerings on exploring the prevention mindset. And again, it's a self-paced course. It's something that you can do with your teams, which is just a really excellent way to engage in the prevention planning activities, but also bring your own prevention knowledge way up so that when you're on the team, you're a prevention guru. And again, we want to thank you for being here and bringing your voice to the process, because it's really your knowledge, experience, and resources are so important to ensuring that these plans are relevant and are effective. Hearing from the parents, hearing from the tribal representatives, it always just reinforces to me that, you know, we can provide the best service imaginable, but if we don't listen to the people that are on the receiving end of the service, we can completely miss what they actually need to hopefully stay out of child welfare services, but more important, thrive and in their communities. So one of the things we want you to think about a little bit, and we'll spend a few minutes on this, and put in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand and we will unmute you. What brings you here today? And most importantly, how does your lived expertise and experience help prevent child abuse and neglect in your community? And just as an example, I'll speak to my own experience. I was a single mom when my son was like 18 months old. And I always, when I'm working with families, I'm also a CASA volunteer in my community here in South Lake Tahoe. And I always say when I start working with a family, you know, I was a single mom. It was very, very scary prospect for me. And I had all the resources that a person could have. I was educated. I had parents that at the time were able to support me. They were there if my son was sick. I never had to miss work because my son was, you know, couldn't go to school. I had a car. I had a home. But even with all of that, I struggled as a parent, being a single parent. It was really hard. And I only had one child. When I was hearing the gentleman this morning, Robert, talk about 6 children, you know, I'm like, holy kaboli, that's a lot of kids. One was almost too much for me. So when I think about that, that's what I bring when I come and I talk to families, is that, you know, I know how difficult it is and what a struggle, and how can we support you? How can create that family and create that support? So maybe spend some time, and let's see if we've got some folks chatting. Dr. Clark says, want to close the gap in disproportionality in the African-American community. So important. We've got parent partner program, Victor Community Support Services, San Joaquin. Okay. In your first 5. Hi, Caitlin. I see in your first 5 here. Just scrolling down to see if folks. Candy loves Caltrain trainings. I do too, Candy. I think they do a great job. Oh, and then Jessica added for the Caltrain newsletter. Thank you, Jessica. Okay, Karen says she's new to supporting our focal services foster youth this year, here to learn. Excellent, excellent. Anyone else want to share, or maybe be brave and take themselves off mute? Share maybe what they bring to the prevention planning in there, or to the prevention services in their community. Amber says they're just beginning.
Hello.
Hi, Candy.
Hi, I was typing this, but it's a whole lot to type, so I'm going to just share.
Thank you.
25 years ago, my children were removed by Child Protective Services because my life was out of control and I made poor choices as a parent. So after doing what I needed to do to get them returned, I just completely changed my life, and I wanted to help other people through the system and let them know that it is possible. That's why I do what I do today.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And it's that hope, right, that we can bring to folks that, you know, as a CASA, when I work with parents and you know, it's the worst possible time in their life ever. You know, I always say that, you know, that is like so difficult. Imagine, you know, put yourself in those shoes, and you can bring that hope to that person. Child welfare does not want to take your children. Child welfare wants, you know, we want to help you. We want, what do you need? And then we have to deliver on that, right? That's the key.
Definitely. And I work in differential response. So we work with families before their children are removed to try to prevent them from being removed.
Beautiful. Thank you. And then Jesse says, as a community provider, seeing how we can expand our services and help the county to provide more front end to reduce the trauma. That's it. That's it, Jesse. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. But that's why we're all here today, right? And we want to make sure, we just want to, we know what the trauma is for families. Even just having a child welfare referral is traumatic. All right, so let's go into the background on prevention, what we've been doing on the prevention efforts in the state. So this is just a brief overview. Back in January of 2019, there was a group that came together, and we have a picture and a future slide that you'll see us all together pre-COVID. 22 counties came together. It was our first prevention summit. We went down to San Diego, and counties brought teams down, and they started this, what I would call almost like the voluntary prevention planning. Let's come together, bring teams in, and identify some prevention goals, primary, secondary, and tertiary. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. And then, of course, you know, the teams went back to their home counties. Life intervened. We had another team meeting in September of 2019, and then the big event occurred, the COVID. So it really was a struggle for all of us to continue, but many counties did continue with their prevention planning efforts. And again, this is all pre the Families First program. In August of 2021, we brought teams together again, remotely, completely remotely. And at that time, there was a huge focus on equity at that meeting. And Brittany's going to drop in the chat for us a link to the Collective Impact Forum's Racial Equity Toolkit. At that August 2021 Prevention Summit, we had Junius Williams and Hassan Davis, who talked about how you can utilize prevention planning to really address the disproportionality that we see in our child welfare system, which we all know is in evidence, as well as bringing the tribal Office of Tribal Affairs, that's OTA, Office of Tribal Affairs, came as well. And that was a great meeting. A lot of the counties came back from that thinking, okay, how do we engage a broader community in our collaboration? And we're still working on that, because it's not something that you can just complete. It is definitely a journey. It's an ongoing effort, which is what we learned today as well from our tribal representatives. June of 2022, we had we brought in some new prevention teams, because at that time, you'll see in terms of our timing, Families First Prevention Service Program came into effect. And then today, here we are at this prevention summit with hundreds and hundreds of people, which is just a wonderful, we've really come full circle at this point. Back in 2019, we had Dr. Robin Jenkins, and he talked about the value of prevention. And again, we had OCAP and the 10 child welfare directors formed a prevention cabinet, which was key in planning this prevention summit. And tomorrow, Dr. Robin Jenkins is going to be working with us on the plenary sessions. So we've basically come full circle from that 2019. We've got Dr. Jenkins back again, and he will be, as you work locally with your counties, he's going to be providing information in between and asking great questions and helping to guide our conversations tomorrow. So this is a picture of that 2019 Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Summit. As you can see, look how close we were together, no masks. It's a whole different world. But again, the counties that came to this, there was an application process. So it was more like a voluntary process. They began with this, this summit. And one of the things that we learned at the summit, we also heard from Safe and Sound. And Safe and Sound is a local organization here in California. One of the things that they developed at that time was this concept of, we all know the human traumatic cost of child abuse and neglect in our communities. But what are the actual costs of child abuse and neglect? So since that 2019 summit, they've been updating annually this cost for fatal and non-fatal child abuse cases in the state of California. And what they look at is for that year, so like in the year 2022, they look at any child that had an open case, a substantiated child abuse and neglect case, and they look at what's the cost over that child's lifetime. And again, they look at that annually. So for the year of 2022 in California, they said it's a $24 billion cost. And if you take that money and you reinvested it in things like college, preschool, you could actually save 7% of the state budget, and you would have a much healthier, productive, and less traumatized community. And you can do the same analysis. You can receive the same analysis for your county. So if you see the link there, the economics.safeandsound.org, that will take you to a website, which you put in your county, and it'll show you the exact same thing. They look at the child abuse and neglect cases in that county for that year, again, substantiated open cases, and then they calculate what's the cost in those children's lifetime and what you could be doing with that money. And they give you graphics that are ready to use. So in Calaveras County, one of the counties that I work with, their Family Wellness Coalition utilized those graphics in a presentation to their county supervisors to talk about why prevention is so important. Not just, again, we know as human beings, the human cost, but this is the cost to our society and communities. So I'd highly recommend, if you have a chance, take a look at that. So what we want to do now is just take a moment, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We have a little Menti, and hopefully you've used Mentimeter before, but we have a little Mentimeter activity where we want you to think about, what does an optimal system of child and family well-being look like to you? Because again, it's not just child abuse prevention. We want child and family well-being. So if you go to, and it's usually easier if you do it on your phone, not necessarily on the computer that you're watching us on, you can either go to www.menti.com and put that code in, 13206452, or you can take a picture with your phone of the QR code and scan that, and it'll take you right to the Menti. So again, the question is, what does an optimal system of child and family well-being look like to you? So I'm going to stop sharing. Take your time to and then Brittany, I think you have to share your screen so we can see the Menti. And what I like about Mentimeter, and we actually used Mentimeter in El Dorado County to help our do listening sessions with families. It's kind of nice because once people get past the technology part, it's anonymous, so no one knows what you're saying. So you can ask some questions that might be a little, people might feel uncomfortable sharing in a group. But also, when people say the same, when they give the same response, it gets larger. So at the end, you'll see the Menti will basically show what it is that is most important to this group. So right now we've got 9 folks that responded. So maybe we'll give it a little bit more time. So right now, respectful, collaborative, and supportive.
Looks like we've also got coordinated, engagement, understanding, loving.
Yes. Family-centered. I like first rate. Empathetic. Yeah. And we heard that, just listening to our panel of folks that have been through the system and have had experiences, how very important it is. And it's, that's something that's in El Dorado County, when they went and looked at, they went to their listening sessions and asked people what were the biggest barriers. It wasn't transportation. It was fear. It was being judged. It was feeling like you might lose your children. Those were the biggest barriers. And I look at that and I say, those are things we can fix for free. Those are inside of us. That's our empathy. And how do we create that empathetic environment for the children and families that are in our system? All right, so we got about 20 folks, respectful, safe.
Looks like somebody put harmony. I really like that one.
Yes, healing, listening. Excellent. And this Menti will be available in the materials in the Google Drive, just in case you want to go back and look at it and think about, what are the things that are important to us. All right. I am gonna, at this point, I'll go back to sharing my screen. I'm gonna cut you off. Okay. So we know what we need to achieve. And hopefully one of the things that we're going to see with our Families First program is a movement toward that kind of a more respectful, empathetic system that respects the families. So, we talked about that little timeline, started in 2019. Then in April of 2022, California joined in with other states to try to implement this Families First Prevention Services program. And the Families First Prevention Services program, that's the state of California name, but it's actually based on a federal act. And the federal act is the Federal Families First Prevention Services Act. So that's the A in FFPSA, it's ACT. And this was a part of a 2018 reconciliation bill on the federal level. It actually went into effect nationally in 2019, and it was and is the first major change in federal foster care funding in a generation. The big selling point of this is that it includes prevention services in the entitlement, and the entitlement is Title IV-E. So those of you who are working in child welfare, working in probation, have probably heard of Title IV-E, but for many of us out there, Title IV-E doesn't mean much, but Title IV-E is an important funding stream that in the past, previously, was specifically focused on children and families that were already in the child welfare system, and the children were removed. And I say child welfare, but it's also probation. So if the child was placed through child welfare or probation, you could draw down these federal Title IV-E dollars to pay a portion of the cost. The Families First Prevention and Services Act changed that, continued with the funding for children that are in placement, but also added a group that you are now able to draw down Title IV-E dollars for a group of children that are not in placement, may not even be in child welfare yet. They may not even have an open case. They may be what the state will define, and we'll talk about that in a moment, as imminent risk of being placed in foster care. So this is a very important change, but it has a lot of strings attached to it. I will say that. So beware of the strings, as we say. So as we said, California's 5-year prevention plan was approved in April, so just last month. And Brittany will drop a link to the California 5-year prevention plan. If you have time and you want to review it, it's very readable, but it goes through exactly the vision of the Families First Prevention and Services Program. So as the county is working to implement this federal FFPSA, Federal Families First Prevention Service Act, to draw down these Title IV-E dollars, California passed a law, AB 153, and created the state block grant program, which is the Families First Prevention Service Program, FFPS. So without the A. The block grant program, in order to opt in and to receive these block grant dollars, the counties are required to submit a comprehensive prevention plan, CPP, that's the CPP, by July 31st of 2023, which is coming up very, very soon. So what does that mean, comprehensive prevention plan? So it's basically a plan that is designed to create a system where families can get the help they need wherever they go. It's a collaborative plan. As you can hear from all the different speakers this morning, it really is, the hope is that you're going to bring in the lived voice of the community. You're going to bring in your tribal members. It's really, it's comprehensive. And it also covers all 3 levels of prevention: primary, secondary, and tertiary. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But for those, just quickly, primary is for everyone: educational services, your police department. Primary is everybody, is accessible to everyone. Secondary prevention, we're talking about families that already have a risk factor. I always say that's most of us. I don't know many families without a risk factor. And then tertiary, we've already had abuse has occurred. So tertiary is typically families that are in the system already. So they're already in child welfare, they're already in probation. And what we want to do is provide services well before they get into that. So that's the idea of the comprehensive prevention plan. And then this is just, I love this this graphic. I took it from one of the, I think, Implematics slides in some of the learning forums that we've done. But it basically just summarizes. We've got the Federal Families First Prevention Services Act, plus the state block grant program, plus a comprehensive prevention plan. And that is California's Family First Prevention Services Program. Any questions, or Brittany, anything in the chat I need to? Okay, cool. So let's talk about the funding. So the overview of the funding. So there's federal funding. We talked about the Title IV-E funding, and this is, again, to keep children out of the system, including the juvenile justice system. It also can provide services to keep families out of the system completely. So that's really, really important. And that's defined by the state, and then the counties in their comprehensive prevention plans, they're going to define who are the children and families we're going to focus in on, because defining that is going to be very important. So that's your secondary prevention folks. And then, of course, providing services to children where they're already in child welfare. So, you might have families in child welfare where the child has not been removed from the home. In El Dorado County, and I'm assuming in many of the other counties, we call those family maintenance cases. So that's where the children either have been returned to the home or they're never removed, and the services are provided while the family's still together, which is a great goal. There may also be families that are voluntary to the system. So those families are in voluntarily, they're not going through the court. They too are going to be eligible for this Title IV-E funding stream. So it really opens up the Title IV-E much more broadly within child welfare. And then there's those children and families that we want to keep out of the system completely. However, one of the things that is very important is, and we'll talk about this in a moment, it requires the use of evidence-based practices. EBPs, another acronym. So there's a list of evidence-based practices that the state of California included in their plan. And it's kind of the menu that the counties can select from and determine what evidence-based practices they want to include in their county plan, and that they may want to expand or they may want to bring into their county. Then there's the state dollars, and the state dollars are very flexible. They can provide primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. You could be really innovative with them, but there's a string to those as well. They're a block grant. And the block grant currently is scheduled to expire in June 30th, 2024, which again is coming around very quickly, as we know. There is a movement because many of these funds have not been spent yet. So, many of the counties are asking the state, could we extend that date? And I know it's a hope, but there are obviously budgetary considerations in the state of California, as many of you know, which may prevent that from happening. So right now, that's what we're planning, is how are we going to spend those dollars in the next year? And then what are we going to do if we create a program and we want to sustain that program? Where will we find the funding? So that's something that counties are grappling with across the state. And then there's your existing prevention dollars, your CB dollars. You've got ARPA funds that were allocated. ARPA were American Rescue Plan Act. Those were COVID dollars one time, but they augmented the CB. So the counties have those funds. You've got your Promoting Safe and Stable Families funding. And then, of course, there's a whole range of services that are out there. You've got your CalAIM, which is a Medi-Cal expansion. You have behavioral health dollars in wellness centers throughout the state of California. So the plan is asking you to look at all the different funding streams and think about how can you create a sustainable prevention network in your county. And there's also a list of the Families First Transitional Act funding, the FFTA, another acronym. Those funds were made available to counties on an opt-in basis. Some counties opted in, some did not. And they provide a lot of the planning support for this process because the state recognized that this is a heavy lift to create this comprehensive prevention plan. So just in summary, the difference between the FFPS-A Part 1, which is the Title IV dollars, thanks, Brittany just gave me the time, and the FFPS program. So the Families First Prevention Service Act or the Title IV, they're uncapped, but they're specifically for those tertiary and secondary prevention activities targeted through evidence-based practices at families and children at imminent risk of foster care or probation. The FFPS state block grant dollars specifically for not specific for all levels of prevention, but you can utilize them for primary, be more innovative, but again, they're a block grant and they expire. So we giveth and we taketh away. So again, just a summary, here's our prevention pyramid, right? And we're looking at primary prevention activities, which can be funded with the state block grant, secondary, which can be funded with the state block grant, tertiary, and then FFPSA Part 1, the Title IV dollars, focused on tertiary and secondary. And I kind of put it half up the secondary because it's the higher level risk families. I feel so many of us fall under I know my family fell under the secondary. So one thing I wanted to think about and ask you is, where do you see yourselves on the prevention continuum in terms of the services you provide? And if you're brave enough again and you want to unmute, please raise your hand, or just we can chat. Are you primary? Are you secondary? Are you tertiary? Are you all three? Just take a moment and think about where you're at. As a CASA person, a CASA volunteer, I focus on the tertiary in my community because the children and families I work with are in the child welfare system. Okay, we got CALA, primary and secondary. And maybe even add, what are some of the services that you provide in that arena?
Looks like Celia said all three.
Okay, great. Working with foster youth, all three.
Yeah. Same with Monica.
All three, yeah. Jesse, our country currently focuses on tertiary, working with families who are working toward reunification. Yes, post-detention. Okay.
Looks like a lot of all three, which is nice. It's
mental health services, secondary and tertiary, all three. Youth advocacy, leadership development. Excellent. Excellent. Putting young people to self-and training. And that I would consider, I don't know the target population of your program, if it has. So that's a great example, a youth advocacy leadership program. If it's open to all youth, that's a primary prevention program. If it says, you have to have been a youth that's been in foster care in order to be in this program, then you're in the tertiary, world of prevention, primary and secondary. So it's not just your program. It's who are you focused in on? I know the CASA program in El Dorado County, they're hoping to work with some families in family court that have had nothing to do with child welfare, that maybe are just going through a really contentious divorce. Then you're getting into, in my primary and secondary. Youth with experience in foster care, homelessness, and juvenile justice. That's definitely you're in the tertiary and the and the secondary. RAP, mental health, school. Yes, school-based, the wellness centers that are a lot of the county, a lot of the school districts are implementing, very much a primary prevention, very much a great partner in really moving upstream in your prevention efforts. All right, so I'm just going to move on because I know we're running out of time. Time is always my nemesis, I must say. So this basically just gives you the specific components of the comprehensive prevention plan. And I'm not going to go through each one. I'm just going to share with you that, some of the key pieces, which are, they want the plan to look at what are some of the assets and gaps in the community. They want the plan to look at who is the target population. And that's that second column, top box, candidacy population and services. They talk about candidacy. To me, it's like, who's the target population? And the state plan identifies certain candidate groups, which we'll talk about in a second, but it's very broad. They want a theory of change and logic model. They want you to kind of think about as a county, what are the problems you're trying to address? What are the interventions that you're trying to implement, and what are the outcomes you're hoping for? And so that's a big piece of the plan. Cross-sector collaboration, key. Choosing your evidence-based programs, very, very important. And then, of course, that tribal engagement, the lived voice of the community, bringing that community voice into the plan so you can actually see it and hear it. And counties are doing that in lots of different ways. Excuse me. So we talked about evidence-based practices. If Brittany would be so kind, she's going to drop a link to this graphic. This is put out by the California Evidence-Based Clearinghouse. There are many, many evidence-based programs going on throughout the country. I think there's over 70 in the state of California. The state of California selected 10 evidence-based practices. And what I like about this is it's a handy tool to just give you an idea about what is the practice, what are the goals, who is it targeting, and then talk a little bit about what are some of the requirements. Because I know, especially the counties I work in rural counties, we have a lot of workforce issues. So that's a big barrier to implementing some of these evidence-based practices. So this is a great resource for you to have and to hold as you're involved in prevention planning and looking at what are some of the practices that counties really are able to implement, given the restrictions of some of the things that we're facing in terms of workforce at this time. So it's a 2-pager. It shared all the different ones. And one of the things I just want to add as well is this is phase 1. So this isn't the end all of evidence-based practices. The state has said that, depending on what the plans say, and I would encourage folks, if you're doing other evidence-based practices in your county, include them in the plan and let the folks know these are things we'd like to expand as well, because California can go back to the federal government and can ask for additional evidence-based practices to be included. But having the information about what's happening already in the community is really, really critical to doing that. And then we talked about the candidate groups. So, and again, target population candidate groups, the way that the federal government classifies it's a candidate group. And you can see this is a very broad group. You can, any family at risk really can be included in this candidate group. So some of the counties, depending on their population, are selecting 1 or 2 or 3 candidate groups to focus their efforts upon, at least in their first phases. Whereas other counties where they may have a lower population of child welfare families, they may include all the candidate groups because they have so few in each one. So that's one of the things to look at and ask your county, what candidate groups are you including? Why did you choose those candidate groups if you don't already have that information? Okay. And then the frameworks. So this is really important as well. When we started prevention planning back in 2019, we said to the counties, think about a framework that you want to select. for organizing the way you develop your programs and services. So some of the counties picked protective factors, some of the counties picked social determinants of health. Those were sort of the two main ones. Some counties selected more than one. The idea behind a framework is it's a way to really organize both your data. How do you know if families are improving in the ways you want them to improve? So, protective factors is one way. A lot of the counties, their goals are related to increasing protective factors in families. So these are areas that we know, the Center for the Study of Social Policy has lots of information, and these are those those areas that help really provide families with what they need to be strong. So, concrete supports in times of need, social connections, so critical, social emotional competence of children, etc. So many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the protective factors, but when you see it in your comprehensive prevention plan, that's its role. Its role is to try to help not only organize data, but identify goals for how are you going to measure whether or not we're actually impacting families. And the same thing with social determinants of health. Prevention efforts should aim to look at all these different areas. And again, to move upstream, we need healthy communities. You need to have a healthy community, and these social determinants of health are the key components of a healthy community. And this is just an example of how you can connect primary prevention strategies to social determinants of health. It's examples of different services, different activities that can really help impact the entire community. That primary prevention, where we're looking at everyone, and we're not saying you have to have a risk factor in order to get into this particular service, right? Hopefully that makes sense to folks. Oops, sorry. So just to kind of sum up this area, one of the pieces that we really want to emphasize today, and I think you hopefully heard it this morning, is how important it is to lift up that voice of parents, the tribal members, youth with lived expertise. I wanted to just share, one of my CASA youth that I worked with her for over 5 years, and she was a very verbal, and she could really share with me one-on-one her needs and wants. But put her in a CFT and one of those child family team meetings, she just shut down. She shut down physically. She didn't answer questions. Mom's in the room, stepdad's in the room. There's a lot of discomfort. So again, it's one thing to have youth at the table, but how do you lift up that youth voice, right? How do you ensure that that person feels comfortable sharing what they really need? And I think that's so important. How do you know that the strategies in your plan promote equity? Have you looked at disproportionality in your child welfare system? Do you include leadership of many different community entities? Is there a primary prevention strategy in your CPP, in your comprehensive prevention plan? It's easy to focus in on the Title IV piece, but we really do want to move that work upstream. And then think about, what support do you need from the state? We're a part of that support system. Caltrin is a part. How can we support you? What is it that you need from us to help you innovate, to help you lift up those voices? That's why we're here. That's why we're funded by the state of California, to try to help you in those areas. So we really want you to think about that and share those with us as over the next day. And I just want to share a little bit about community pathways, because it's a very important piece of the plan. And the idea of the community pathway is that families come into our service system in many different ways, right? They come in through child welfare, they come in through probation. But what we want to do is make sure that we have pathways in our community that allow for the community, that allow for folks to come and access services well before they have a hotline contact, well before they've been referred well before the child's engaged in probation because they've, committed a criminal act. What we want to do is create community pathways that are not stigmatizing, that people can feel comfortable. And, again, think about your family resource center, etc. So the 5-year plan talks about what type of pathways you can have. But think about it as broadly as you can. Think about where do families in need go now? Where do families that are needing services? I loved one of the presenters talking about the no wrong door. That's really what we're thinking about. El Dorado County has community hubs in the libraries. That's where people can feel comfortable going, right? There's no stigma. Your preschools, your Head Start, so many different agencies can become a community pathway. And this little graphic is in the California 5-year plan, but it really talks about it, the different areas of, there's the family, they intake with the provider. For some families, they're going to meet the Title IV-E. Many families are not going to meet the Title IV-E imminent risk. Where are services delivered? How do you coordinate services, et cetera? And key to this community pathway is that concept of moving from being a mandated reporter to becoming a community supporter. And Brittany's going to drop a link to a document that Safe and Sound put out about just this concept. And again, so many of our families are referred to child welfare because we don't know anywhere else to refer them. But over 60% of those referrals, they don't open a case. Many of them are not even investigated. What happens to those families? How could we have avoided sending them to child welfare to begin with, and rather serving them in the community in places where they feel comfortable asking for help? And that leads me to, where is your county in the planning process? Hopefully, where your county is. Hopefully tomorrow you're going to be participating with your county in the hybrid meeting where we're going to have county teams remoting into the plenary sessions with Dr. Jenkins, and then the counties are going to be having discussions locally. You can also remote in to some of the counties. Some of the counties are going to have breakout rooms like this, where they're going to discuss the questions and spend the day discussing the plan. So I'm just wondering, do you know where your county is in the planning process? Are you planning on participating tomorrow in a hybrid meeting or a breakout room? So maybe if you want to, you feel free, again, raise your hand or chat if you have any questions. Oh, thank you, Jessica. It's Caltrin's sister site. There you go. Those are some good sisters. Anybody have any questions or do they not know even if their county's doing a planning process? Yes. San Benito County. Unmute yourself.
Good morning, Barbara.
Hi.
My name is Joshua. I'm a deputy director here in San Benito County. I oversee our child welfare program, and we're in the very, very earliest of phases of development of our comprehensive prevention plan. We vacillated back and forth on whether we were going to opt in to part 1 for quite a while because we are considered a very small county. And there were a lot of questions about when the state's plan was going to be approved by the feds. We kind of held out for a little while. So today really is kind of our kickoff. We're pretty far behind, but we have members here today. We've all kind of sat together, and we've got representatives from child welfare, behavioral health, probation, CASA, the Child Abuse Prevention Council, and one of our community-based organizations here. So we're excited, we're nervous. I did have a question about an earlier slide. And I don't know if this is the perfect platform to ask, but I'm going to do it anyways. So there was a section where it talked about the block grant a few slides back, and how the block grant for counties that opted in, counties would be able to lean on that block grant through 2024.
Yes.
And then it also talked about being able to draw down these Title IV funds. And in some other meetings with CDSS and CWDA, what I've heard through the grapevine is that counties are going to need to lean heavily on existing funds, including the block grant, OCAP, and other pieces that you mentioned. But we're not going to be able to actually draw down the Title IV funds until the state's CARES case management system goes live.
Yes, you're
And
correct.
We're not going to be able to retro, like put in a retro compensation claim at that point. So my question is, if the block grant is due to sunset in 2024, I just received confirmation from the state that they're wanting to go live with version 1 of CARES in 2026.
Oh my gosh.
If there's that 2-year gap, what are counties supposed to do?
And you're 100% correct. I think I can't answer that question. That's really a great question for CDSS, you know, and I don't know. One of the things that I'm just going to go to this last slide because I think I don't have it. Okay, I'm going to share my email address. There's a website. There's an email address on the CDSS website for questions.
Yeah.
Okay. And I would definitely put that question into that website. Also, I think tomorrow there's going to be a lot of time to ask that question, you know, because we're going to talk about sustainability. My understanding of the Title IV, and I'll just say this because I don't want to confuse anyone or give misinformation. My understanding of the Title IV is that you're not going to be able to claim for services until the care system goes into effect. But it was my understanding that you could claim for administrative and training costs. So that's something to also ask about. I also was not aware of the non-retro. That I'm not aware of as well. So that's a really good question. And we'll take it down, make sure we'll give it to our team. And then tomorrow I would say to you, you know, ask that question again, and then we have the county website.
Thank you.
I saw another hand. I don't know if the person, I thought I did. Okay. Oh, thank you, Brittany. Brittany put my email in as well. Yeah. Oh, okay. So Candy thinks Kern just finalized. I said, PP, great. And that's a great point, because even if your county has finalized the CPP, that is just their plan. Now the implementation starts. So that's why it's so important. Don't feel like, oh, my county's plan is in, it's done, I don't have any opportunity to contribute. No, that is not the case. The devil is going to be in the implementation and, you know, the spending of those block grant dollars. And there's definitely opportunity on the local level. We want folks to feel like they can come to the table, they can comment, because these plans are living documents and they can be changed and altered. And that's one of the other things that CDSS is really you know, focused upon, is that, you know, you're just making a plan at this juncture. You don't know what are the barriers that you're going to see in the future. The CARES is one huge one. But also in terms of if the block grant should get extended, fingers crossed, if that's feasible or possible, don't know. But come to the table, because in the implementation and development of services, your voice is so critical. Let's see what else we got. Oh, Ventura finalizing. Wow, that's great. And they're meeting in person. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Yes. And if you have any questions and you want to, please feel free to email me. If I can't answer it myself, I will definitely try to direct you to the correct person. How are we doing on time there? 12:08. Okay. We have a little bit more time, 2 minutes.
I am going to share in general the link to all this, which is the Google Drive that has everything, as well as the workshop for all the slides, the links.
The Google Drive.
Catch it. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Anybody else want to share or have any questions or any thoughts? Do you feel ready to come to the table? If you're not already at it. And good for you, San Benito. I just want to say that also there are other counties that are in your shoes. I work with another county, Mono, that is just starting out as well. And many counties, especially our counties that are rural and have small child welfare populations, very, very concerned about opting into the program, because how much for $40 are you actually going to be able to draw down? That's really, and then of course the timing issue is so critical. So yes, there's a lot of trepidation, and a lot of counties are doing some super innovative things that they don't want to have, you know, interfered. They want to continue doing their innovation. Oh, and Amber said, Josh, thank you, Josh. We're just talking about contracting for help with this process. Glenn County is very small as well. Yes, and there are definitely a lot of entities out there that are working in different counties, helping them develop their plan, because that's one of the other problems with some of our smaller, and I hate to say small because a lot of you are really large. I'm from New Jersey, so a small county in California is bigger than the whole state of New Jersey, but you don't have the people. You don't have a person to write the plan. So contracting is a great idea. Lake is meeting in person tomorrow, not certain where they're at. Okay. I know that Lucy Hernandez, who moderated the panel this morning from Strategies TA, she's a great resource. She's been working with Lake all along. So Kimberly, I'll share your name. Yes, Glenn, 28,000 people, but very big. Yes, yes. But 28,000 is a small number. I work with Sierra County. They're 3,000. So we could almost put every person in the plan. Is the way I look at it. But I'm going to give Kimberly, I'm going to give your name to Lucy Hernandez. Okay. All right. Oh, she's got it. Okay, Kimberly, great. Yeah, she's a great person to reach out to and just, you know, get a status check. I know they've been meeting in person a lot, so. All right, Brittany, you know when they're taking us back, when there's the rapture will occur?
It will have, and we've got about 4 more minutes. And then,
okay, good.
If anybody is unaware of who or where their county's meeting as well, you should have received an email with your county's information or people within the area that are meeting as well.
Does anybody have any questions about tomorrow and what's happening and where they should be going?
Connie liked your rapture comment as well.
I know, it does feel that way, doesn't it? Ooh, they take us back.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if anybody has any questions, you let me know. I hope this was helpful to you, and I hope you feel ready to, you know, share your thoughts and information. And I say, if you want to take an extra few minutes and go do whatever it is you want to do, feel free. My feelings will not be hurt. And any questions will remain on until we're taken back to the main group.